If from the report we have seen, including the remarks by the chairman of the committee, the Foreign Affairs Committee, and those of the majority leader are anything to go by, it means that the facts are quite clear, and the case for an investigation is clear. The case for investigating this matter is clear. And I listened carefully to Honorable Okujeto Ablakwa because he was even calling on the minister to investigate. He was not accusing her. He was calling on her to investigate because it is also possible that what we are talking about is happening on the blind side of even the minister. And yet, all that has been thrown away, and the last man, the president, who himself doesn't know much about many of the things that are going on in the country because of what he displayed recently at the press conference, comes around and says it's all about opposition politics. Mr. President, we expect more than this from you. This is not what we elected you to do. And this is not what you promised Ghanaians. And we are going to hold you to your promises. We are going to hold President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo and the MPP government to the promises they made to the good people of Ghana. And if he thinks that in 2019 it is going to be about minority continuing to do some things, he should better think again, because the people of Ghana will be facing their president and the government next year. Next year will be the year of accountability, I declare. Because, you see, in government against corruption, normally the window of opportunity that exists for every new government is within the first 18 to 24 months. And now, that window is closing up. Clearly, President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo is locking himself in a room where he will need to bail himself out of. Because, you know, you cannot reduce everything to politics. And indeed, one of the things that has happened in the last 24 months that has taken, in my view, has taken this country backwards is the extreme partisanship, which is displayed by the #1 person in the country. He reduces, our president reduces everything to party politics, to the extent that even now he has taken it beyond the political parties as he did during his press conference. He's now taking it even to civil society groups and saying that they don't, they make empty noise. But you see, it's interesting, and I hope this is a lesson for my friends in civil society. Now our president is saying you make empty noise. I remember earlier this year in ideas from them how he's going to tackle the problem of corruption in order to improve our score in the CPI in future. I think it is time for the civil society groups themselves to now realize that the president did not mean anything when he summoned them. He was just doing politics, cheap politics. That is what the president was doing. In fact, when I looked at some of the people who went to meet the president about this corruption perception index in the meeting, they didn't even show the meeting. You know, they are going to a meeting about transparency and it is not transparent. They lock them behind closed doors to have the meeting. What do you have to discuss with Ghanaians or civil society groups about inputs to public policy that you need to hide from people? They only showed the introduction where he made his welcome statement and we saw the faces of people, and then they went behind closed doors. You cannot do transparency work in darkness. You cannot fight corruption by switching off the lights. So I think we will be beating about the bush if we pretend as if this scandal, and it is a monumental scandal, it is yet one of the big minuses of this president and this government in his first 24 months in office. And for me, as I said already, it is time to call upon the party that put this president as their leader to think twice about the party's future. Because maybe in the short term, they are, and I say this from a position where we have been meeting some of them, and indeed, there are a lot of NPP members who are quite uncomfortable with the president's posture on a lot of things. They tell you in private. What I'm telling them is to stop talking in private and come out and say our party upholds certain values and principles that is higher than what our leader is displaying. Because anybody can be the leader of a party at a time. But the values and principles of a party must be such that when they put any person to lead them, that fellow must represent those values and principles. And if it is necessary for the party to save itself and its future by denouncing some of the things the president is saying and doing, they should better do that sooner than later. But they are not the only people. I have said elsewhere that one of the biggest things we are suffering from in this country, and especially in the last 2 years, is a huge deficit of honesty. And I will continue to say that honesty, or its opposite, dishonesty, is corruption. If you don't know what corruption is, when you meet a dishonest man, the fellow is a corrupt person. You take it from me. And the level of dishonesty, lack of transparency, we have seen in the last 2 years is enough for us to say something is wrong. Something is wrong, and it is a very serious thing which is wrong. We cannot continue in this light. And once we talk about honesty, it also brings to mind those groups and people or leaders that are supposed to promote honesty and integrity. And that, for me, brings to mind our religious leaders. Where are they? Where are religious leaders in Ghana? I recall in 2000 when President Rawlings met Catholic bishops in Cape Coast, and he spoke in such a way that even the bishops themselves were confounded. He said, truth is divine. Rawlings said that truth is divine. So where are our religious leaders in the face of so much lack of truthfulness, so much dishonesty in our society? Where are they? And now that I have mentioned former President Rawlings, maybe it is also time for us to call upon him, because we know the relationship he has had with the current administration and the president, to call upon the former president to use his closeness with the president to perhaps advise him, because I think that will do a lot of good to former President Rawlings' own image. Okay, Mr. Martin. No, let me, it's an important point. I say this because for some time now, and I'm quite close to the former president. I mean, I'm not talking as somebody who is just criticizing. The former president has told me before, earlier this year, that we must all help President Akufo-Addo in his fight against corruption. And that is why I'm also telling him that it doesn't look like President Akufo-Addo is the type of president we can help because of his own posture. And I'm doing this in a very I've had the biggest number of scandals, I would say, in the shortest time in our country's history. And that is the reason why I think that the former president and founder of the NDC should take advantage of his current relationship, cordial relationship with the President Akufo-Addo, and advise him that he is leading the ship of state into deep, troubled waters, and that it is time to change course.
Okay, Mr. Batidam, we'll come to you on the second topic. Well, we had Mr. Daniel Batidam. Before I come to Emmanuel Wilson for his thoughts, let me just read a couple of the messages you've been sending us. Kujutu Mbwafo says, Sana, I do not understand why your panelists keep telling us that the president doesn't know about the corruption in his government. He is a willing and able initiator, participant and purveyor of the first-string corruption that has engulfed the MPP government. Well, this one coming from King Farouk in Kaswa. First, he says, happy birthday, my brother. May Almighty God continue to, year after year, protection, guidance, and good Liza, $12 million. The elephant has a huge appetite for stealing and corruption. They are chopping large, gluttons in power. May heaven liberate this country from this nation wreckers in 2020. And that's coming from King Farouk. A couple of more of the messages that you're sending through our WhatsApp platform, 0233-995905. You can also share your thoughts with us using that number through WhatsApp. And this one from Dawood in Dodowa Forest. Inside Dodowa Forest, it says, good morning, Senator. Please, does Nana get briefing from his ministers at all? When JDM told him and Baolaya that they have no mortal right to criticize him, they did not understand. And now it has dawned on them. At least we now know the difference between real presidents and a fake president. Well, this one from Kwame to CM says, and good morning to you. Honorable Blackwell, don't mind those calling names. After all, we know the type of degrees they were awarded. Kwame CBT Ahafo Atrinsua says, it's time Ghanaians should say enough is enough and come together to wipe all these MVP members from the country. MVP government always deceiving Ghanaians, but they can't deliver their numerous promises. And this one says, hi, Mr. Host. This one is from Philip Adika, aka Odaseni from Italy, says, hi, Mr. Hope and your team. Verily, verily, he who does good needs to be rewarded, and therefore, Honorable Okujeto, aka Jokanagbule, deserves to be rewarded by President Nana Akufo-Addo because he has demonstrated to be a true citizen, as he, the president, told us to be at the initial stage he took office. Failure for the president rewarding Honorable Okujeto Ablakwa may mean he, the president, is part of the dubious deal. I believe there might be similar ones. You dive deeper and you see marvelous things. It's high time we say no to chop Ghana. My regards to Mr. Kwesi Pratt. Well, this one coming from is a repetition of the one from the man from Dodowa Forest. Honorable Blakwa, you are really a genius, and God bless you for saving Ghana from this evil and thievery government. We, the youth of Ghana, are very proud of you. You have exposed the family and friends thievery government, and indeed, we have a square peg in a round hole government who are only empowered to loot and share the Ghana purse. Haja Ruki in New York sent that. Charles Nami and Asamankesi says the corruption and thievery under this government is so glaring and weird. In just 2 weeks, Akufo-Addo and his brigade have been caught in 3 different scandals, trying to rape the state coffers of a whopping 1.8 trillion OCDs. Now, it's clear the old man just wanted to become president. He has nothing better to offer Ghanaians, and you only believe him at your own risk. And this one, Eric Okonu at La Paz says, Honorable Okujeto Ablakwa is a fine gentleman who is intelligent and confident in the Parliament House. I like the way he exposed the foreign minister with a goods transactions. Honorable Okujeto, we the Voltarians are proud of you. He goes ahead to say, in fact, media encounter with Mr. President was poor and a waste of taxpayers' money. Why Mr. President only spoke for 71 minutes and gave only 17 minutes to journalists to ask questions. Yeah, this is below the belt. Honorable Okujeto Ablakwa, keep on exposing the lies about the MPP in the parliament. And this one from Doris Intechi said, peace be unto you, my brother. I wish you and your guests Merry Christmas and Happy New Year in advance. I just want to ask a very serious question. Which card are the voters going to use to vote for the division of the regions? Is it the voters' ID card or the Ghana card? And secondly, what is exactly happening in Parliament? A woman has now turned herself into King Kong, beating up men. The president is there congratulating her. And the MPP too, and the MPP members too, who claim everything is going, so they keep on lying on all radio stations. They are being invited. So should also be very careful. Eyes are watching. This one from Baba Abutari in Shaliboshe St. Peter says, our president has been consistently inconsistent. I thought the president said he was not going to respond to aspirants, but the Meet the Press, which will be in history as the West, was to respond to Prophet John Mahama on the drone issue. So now the president has redefined corruption. The Oslo Chancery issue as the minority requested investigation. He rubbishes it. Our president is not on top of the issues confronting us as Ghanaians. He should stop the arrogance because we are watching his body language. This one says, hi, commerce. Kudos to our Honorable Okujeto together with our humble MPs. Keep on checking on them properly. That's how they are. President Nana-Addo must quickly act on the misbehavior of Madam Ayokobocho in Parliament, and more especially the overbloating of the price in Oslo property. Nana-Addo must sack her immediately for corrupt attitude. This time, no clearance. From Black Joe in Nima. Musa Abato and Kumasi says, Senator, I had the opportunity to read evidence given by Okujeto Ablakwa. I find it difficult to understand the tantrums thrown by Koko Bako as well as President Akufo-Addo at the Meet the Press and sought to question the credibility of the allegation. If President Akufo-Addo thinks this unprecedented scandal is not worth investigating, then those who believe he is incorruptible must revive their thinking. If this is how he is committed to fight corruption, then taxpayers' money will continue to go down the drain. Ghana deserves better. And this one from Ni Bote from Nungwa Kukobi says, please tell Okujeto to stop being charitable on this Oslo matter, because everyone can see that this is a plot to create loot and share. Simple. And this one, Efo Ganyo in Qatar says, hi, Senator. Akufo-Addo and corruption in Ghana. When the so-called bus branding saga broke under President Mahama, Honorable Akua-Tibo voluntarily resigned a position as Minister of Transport and took responsibility for the actions of the office. Even though it was clear from all accounts that the deal was done on a blind side. On the contrary, Nana Akufo-Addo always clears all his appointees of every corrupt act. We are fed up with this president's lip service. Now, finally, Sir Prince in Amanasi says this corrupt government has attempted several times to steal our money, but kudos to my able Okujeto Ablakwa and the minority for their vigilance. So, say no to this corrupt government in 2020. Hashtag PCG Homecoming. Amanasi, Sir Prince Amanasi sent that one. Before I move to Mr. Wilson, if you're seeking to sell or buy a car, be it used or brand new or registered, you can visit the Ghana Trade Fair Center today and tomorrow. Today, 22nd and 23rd December, that's up to tomorrow, to partake in the Vehicle Fair 2018. They will exhibit well-known brands of cars for you to choose from. Now, also available will be various spare parts on display. So if you want to buy spare parts, so be at the trade fair today and tomorrow, and you can get some to buy. Vehicle Fair 2018 is brought to you by buyoneon1.com. Buyoneon1.com, where properties sell fast. You can call them on 0270 940 324, 0270 940 324, and also 0302 300 472. Mr. Wilson.
Senator, good morning.
Good morning.
Let me be quick to seek your leave to express a Merry Christmas to our viewers and our listeners. Let me do the same to Reverend Fred Digby, who is with the Baptist Church at Abraka, and mention same to a very good friend who is in Bahamas and has been very good to me throughout this year, Letitia Fowler. All old students of St. Thomas Aquinas, particularly our president who is listening to you, President John Bolenyo, and O.T. Samuel Anaglate. I can't do without mentioning same to my family, and so I want to wish them a Merry Christmas. But of course, the most important one is the family I have here on ALHAJI and ALHAJI show. All the co-panel members we've engaged in throughout the year, Prof, you can name them, all of them, all of them. I want to thank them for the exchange of ideas and the opportunity to learn some things from them. It's so great. Sana yourself and our boss, Patrick, PAB-MC, his passion is extremely admirable. You have no idea. And I believe that the management of Radio Gold will want to hold Patrick in very high esteem because his passion for this station and its activities is beyond. I'm honestly, is beyond, so let us see how to appreciate people when they are alive other than giving them tributes when they are gone. It doesn't really gel. It doesn't make sense to me. Now, I'm going to be very brief on this topic because extensively it has been discussed, particularly by the one who initiated this whole issue or brought it to the public domain, so that we can have enough time and discuss the other two topics which are equally important and very, very important. Now, in being very brief on this, I will want to look at it from a very broader perspective. If you recall, and Ghanaians, it's important that as we move on, we try to remind ourselves of the past and remind ourselves of where we are coming from, where we are, so to inform us on where we should be, particularly as we prepare towards the 2020 election. Prior to the 2016 election, some of the things that I believe strongly became the trump card, the strong messages of the then Mr. Akufo-Addo, who was the flag bearer. And I believe strongly that there were some of the things that informed the decisions of majority of Ghanaians to vote for him to become the president and to be called His Excellency as we call him now. All right. Now, there were so many promises and so many things that he said. But one of it, which was very key to me, is found in, if you look at November 7, 2016 Daily Guide paper, November 7, 2016. That was when, before the election, so in his campaign tour, one of the things he said was that I will protect the public purse. That's what he said. Now, in saying, he said this at, so he says the presidential or the MPP standard bearer made this clear when he addressed residents at Ateku, a community in the Wasa East constituency of the Western region. This is just part of it. But if you were following closely all the activities of the various political parties, of course, as a leader in a political party, all the opponents, their activities were so interesting and dear to me, so I needed to follow them. There was particularly no instance, averagely no instance, where you will hear the then flag bearer of the MPP, now the president, addressing people, electorates, without him making reference to the fact that he wants to protect the public purse. He kept saying it over and over and over. So it was something that he himself believed in so much. And that is why I was not surprised when his very first communication he made when he assumed office as president, his very first official presidential communication, which took place during the inauguration when he was being sworn in as president at the Independence Square. He reiterated, he mentioned the same thing. So if you make reference to January 9th, 2017 publication of the Daily Graphic. It says, I will protect public purse. And I quote, I shall protect the public purse by insisting on value for money in all public transactions. So the president's definition of protecting the public purse is going to ensure there's value for money in all public transactions that takes place under this government. He's going to do same. If you also visit the website of 3news.com, January 7th publication 2017, I will insist on value for money to protect the public purse, says the president, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. And so this is the background. This is one of the key things that brought in the president, you know, that transformed him from just being a flag bearer to being His Excellency. And so if we want to assess the president, it is just fair that we assess the president by his own standard that he gave us, because we voted him based on the standard he gave us. He said he was going to protect the public purse. Now the president, we have forgotten that this issue that has become a topic, all of us are discussing it right from early days of this week. We've all been discussing it on so many platforms, radio station, we granting interviews and all that. We've been talking about this. This should not be perceived as something new. It shouldn't be perceived as something which is unique, something that is now happening under this government. If you remember, a similar thing has taken place over and over and over under this government. Mind you, all these arguments is on the basis that the president himself promised us prior to he becoming a president, that when he becomes a president, he's going to protect the public purse. And what he meant by protecting the public purse is that he's going to ensure that value for money in all public transactions. You remember Ministry of Agric, where they decided to do a planting for food job, and they used 10 million Ghana cedi to purchase an so-called 4 armyworm chemical in 2017. Now, they used an amount of 10 million Ghana cedi. Just after a period, it came out that the chemical that they went to purchase were ineffective. In other words, the 10 million Ghana cedi is gone waste. One is wondering whether it amounts to value for money, whether it amounts to protecting the public purse. Again, if you look at the same Ministry of Agric, and I'm making reference to 2017, the same Ministry of Agric, 8 million Ghana cedi was used just for publicity, public education on 4 armyworm infection. Publicity. I am not, you are in the media, I'm not sure the number of times you heard of such publicity in the media doom, because I never heard a single one, not even a single one. I made checks with friends in NCC, because if you want any publicity to take place and for it to be very effective, there's no better structure to use than the structures of the NCC. And on authority, I can tell you that they had no idea of the so-called publication or publicity that took place. 8 million Ghana cedi was just used to announce to farmers and to educate them on the 4 armyworm that affected a lot of crops and affected a lot of farms in 2017. Till date, no one knows what kind of publicity took place, and yet we have spent 8 million of the taxpayers' money, 8 million Ghana cedi, on a so-called publicity that we have no idea of. I'm wondering whether that amounts to the protecting of the public purse that the president came out to mention. Now, again in 2018, the 2018 budget, you will remember very well, when some of the budgets, departmental budgets that came, particular one came from a ministry, a very new ministry, called the Ministry of Special Development Initiative. All right. Now, this ministry said they were going to construct 1,000 borehole. Okay, 1,000 borehole, and the unit cost. In other words, for you to construct a borehole, one was going to cost 132,000 Ghana cedi. 132,000 Ghana cedi to construct a borehole. You and I know that our colleagues and friends who are engaged in borehole drilling and all that, if you engage them, they will tell you that you don't need beyond 25 or 30,000 Ghana cedi to drill one borehole. And yet, a government and a president that says he's interested in protecting the public purse decided that they are going to use 132,000 Ghana cedi as against 25 or 30,000 Ghana cedi that can be used. They were going to do that. I'm still wondering if that constitutes, or that is what the president meant when he said he was going to protect the public purse, or he was going to ensure that there's value for money. In going on, the same ministry told us that they needed 800,000 Ghana cedi to develop a website, and its budget, 2018 budget, 800,000 Ghana cedi to develop a website. Websites, which all of us know, we all run organizations and all that, and all of us know that sometimes you don't even need more than 2,000 or 3,000 to develop a website. And yet, Ministry for Special Development Initiative, under a president who promised all of us that he needs our vote, and that when we give him our vote, he's going to protect the public purse. And he's going to do that by ensuring that there's value for money. This is the same president under whose watch a ministry, which is a new ministry he has set up, comes to us, requests for 800,000 Ghana just to develop a website. I have heard instances where individuals are quick, anytime this particular issue is raised, are quick to say that, oh, when it was brought out, they recognized that it was a typo, and so they needed to go and change it. What people are not realizing is that when the ministry and the government indicated that it was a typo error, someone added some zeros to it, and it was just during the typing. The person did it without any malice. The truth of the matter is that the 2018 budget was approved without amendments made to this figure. So in reality, whether it was a typo or it was not a typo, 800,000 Ghana cedi has been approved, officially has been approved for the 2018 budgets. You understand? That again, the president wants us to believe that this is the meaning of protecting the public purse. Let me just try and just mention one or two other areas just to refresh our minds. You remember the 2.5 million Ghana cedi, sorry, $2.5 million used for the Ghana Post GPS deal. When their own financier, one of their leading members, Kennedy Japan, came out and said that this thing could have been done with less than half the cost. Yet $2.5 million was used for this GPS Ghana Post deal. Address system which already exists through Google. He used 2.5 million for that. Look at the other one, which the National Identification Authority. $1.2 billion is what has been used. $1.2 billion is what has been used for this National Identification Authority. Funny enough, just when this amount was approved, weeks on, their reference to the same person I mentioned earlier on, Kennedy Japan, came out and said that, look, this government is using $1.2 billion. It's $1.2 billion. I have presented this budget to the authorities of NIA, and they decided to ignore it. To date, there hasn't been any explanation given to that. Is that what we mean by value for money? When the president told us that that is what he wanted to do. And so you see, there are so many other things I can make reference to. But as I indicated, for time's sake, with all this in mind, when you look at what just transpired at this Oslo discussion or agreement, one is not so much surprised, because there has been practical examples and there has been practical instances where the president has communicated to us that even though he told us that he's in to protect the public purse, through his own actions, he is not really committed to that promise. Neither does he really appreciate what it means to seek value for money in public transactions. I'm not surprised this issue has come up. But truth be told, when this issue came up, I first heard Osechi Mensah, Honorable, and I shared with him perfectly that why not? The number one duty of Parliament is to ensure that they are playing a supervisory role, particularly on the executive wing of our government. And so if Parliament brings a policy, brings a budget, whatever, it is the duty of Parliament to scrutinize and to identify where the faults are and refer it back to executive, for executive to make all those amendments. All right? And so if this transaction comes to Parliament and it has been raised, just like Osechi Mensah said, we need to put a hold on this and then do a further interrogation. It is possible that the minister or individuals who are supposed to be involved are not even aware of this. We may want to give them that benefit of the doubt, even though the truth is Parliament has identified it. Let us see how best we can protect the public purse. And that is why I keep saying that, look, if you make reference to his in the Third Republic under His Excellency Dr. Hilary Mann, there might be so many reasons for this, but history still has it that Dr. Liman, President Liman, though having majority in Parliament, presented a budget and the budget was rejected. And to me, that is the state I expect to see Parliament. Then I'll be confident that our institutions are working. The fact that a particular government of the day has majority in Parliament doesn't mean that in all instances majority should have their way. It shouldn't work. Then we are not committed to ensuring that our institutions are working. And so this, I was expecting, just like the majority leader came out to applaud, I was expecting that everyone will see that, look, this is not an NPP issue. This is a national interest issue. Let us all see how best we can embrace. Let us all see how best we can identify the wisdom in what has been brought out. Let us see and ensure that the right things are being done. I was really surprised after hearing Osechi Mensah and applauding him. I heard the president trying to, rubbish this. And I wouldn't want to go deep into that because we'll get to it when we get to the encounter. But after hearing the president particularly making comments to this Oslo deal, we have minimal age that you need to attain before you can contest, and that is 40 years. Some years back, particularly during the constitutional review process under the late president, His Excellency Atta Mills, there were this group of persons who were advocating for a ceiling, which I didn't really see enthused. I wasn't. Because the reasons they were championing, I didn't really see it to be tangible. But after this encounter, I am beginning to realize that yes, there's wisdom in that. There is a particular stage you attain in life where whether you like it or not, your senses will start diminishing. You understand? And so maybe, but as I said, we'll get there. But why? What did I hear them say? The president and the others, the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee and the minister herself, Shelley. saying that no contract has the House of Lords made a determination on a case which has become a landmark case where is taking place or not, and make reference or compare those facts to the current agreements in this, with particular reference to point 4, which says the purchaser requires the residents to have the following work performed by the seller prior to take over. And the following issues are the things that the purchaser requires the seller to do, which I won't go into it because it has already been gone through. Let us ask ourselves whether or not, as we speak, that said property, this requirement by the purchaser, whether they are being enforced or not. From cross-checking, it is clear that this requirement that the purchaser, being the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, requested the seller to make, which is the consideration I made reference to. As we speak, it is ongoing. What it means is that even though the minister says she has placed a hold on this, she didn't say she has abrogated it. She has placed a hold on it. I'm telling you, the minister knew what she was saying. If the minister has said, I have abrogated it, she knows that it will amount to judgment debts. So, why would a president whom all of us have been made to believe that he is a great lawyer, at least that is what we are told, with all these fundamentals and basic principles, will come and tell all of us that no contract has taken place? It doesn't gel. It doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense to me. But, in concluding, I will also want to commend the minority. Commend my brother Samuel Kujeto for his vigilance. The truth is, this is what they are being paid to do. You understand? And so, minority in parliament, speaking to the fact that, oh, if this was some other country, we would have been applauded. We would have been hailed. And I asked myself, and this morning he made the same comment, and I keep asking, are they expecting applause from those in government? Because so far, all individuals I have heard, with the exception of Chairman, all individuals I have heard criticizing him and minority are individuals who are in government. So they are forgetting, anytime they are making that comment, they should remember that there is this majority out there who constitute a significant number of our population, who may not have the platform as we have to commend them. But the fact that they are not hearing those persons commending them doesn't mean that Ghanaians are not appreciating that. And so I will want to commend them and still encourage that this is what they are being paid to do. And so they should be focused and they should go on that tangent. But honestly, no Ghanaian should be misled by the conscious, careful drafting of untruth from the president and from some other individuals who constitutes the executive and majority in parliament. The truth of the matter is that this is a contract which is ongoing. The best that can be done is to have a review of it. When we decide to abrogate and stop it, we will be leading this country into what is called judgment debt. But let us all be mindful of the fact that this is the same president who promised all of us that he is in to protect the public purse. With the short history I have given, just opposing it to what is happening, I think it is best for Ghanaians listening and viewing to make their own decision and conclusion as to whether this president is a president who really believes in what he says.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wilson. And before I come to Prof, this one, Baba Ibrahim, this one, PAB-MC on Facebook. Viewers have been very active too. today, and Baba Ibrahim said, Dogo says, I knew Kukubaku will surely defend the Oslo Gate with all his blood, because it is denting his beloved government. God is watching all our deeds, and we will surely account for it one day. Jerry Ajay says, good morning, Senator. Nanado lied about presidential diaries. You also lied about the Kaswa interchange as opposition leader. What is more desperation than these? And this one, Alhaji Haruna in Ashaman says, Senator, the media encounter with Nana Akufo-Addo has exposed his incompetence. Baba Ibrahim said, Dogo says once again, the Oslo Gate minister says she has discarded the plans to buy the building on the floor of Parliament. And I asked, is she terminating the arrangement to buy the building with her mouth or by official documents showing termination? Ghanaians deserve better from the Oslo Gate minister. Well, I read Nana Tutu Osei says, good morning. This one, it says it's a tune for the convener of Crossfire Ghana. It says, what is wrong with the NPP? Do you remember the cash for seats, the Jacob Gate, etc.? We admitted a Norwegian newspaper report on a Mary in Parliament that can't admit same on the Oslo Gate. Hypocrisy. Let's put our acts together. NDC, we can't fail Ghanaians in 2020. This one coming from Prosper Mensan says, Senna, good morning. Congratulations to my senior brother, Ablakwa Okujeto. I am NDC branch chairman. For some reasons, I will not mention the name of my branch. My wife had gone through operation delivery, and I spent all the money I have on me. Well, he's asking for help. I think I'll pass it on. Kweku Batman says that what both the minority and Ghanaians should understand is that the MPP believe they own the country, and all its wealth and resources are theirs by rights. For this reason, whenever they are in government, they plunder the country's coffers with impunity, and it says they are only acting in the people's interest. Unfortunately, we have a weak minority which cannot stand up to their onslaught, and therefore the TV and MPP always have their way. I'll be surprised if this transaction is truncated. Let's see if by the end of 2019, Ghana Embassy in Norway is not operating from this same edifice. Samba Adamu says, Nana Akufo-Addo is a liar, Baumia is a liar, Manambocho is a liar, Mustafa Hamid is a liar, Osla also is a liar, and all the entire MPP party members are pathological liars. And a bit more, there's a lot happening, and there's a lot of conversation between the people who are watching us on Facebook. And Herbert Kerr says that, and what is shocking is that Akufo-Addo is defending this rotten corruption. Isn't it shocking? George Nikwe says, watching my favorite program live from Japan on Facebook. Honorable Ablakwa, well done for your good work in Parliament. We, the NDC members in Japan, love you and your good work for Mother Ghana. And still have to go through a lot to find those that are directed at me. And Kito Samo says the speaker was reluctant and took part in the thief's mission, period. And so I'm still struggling to find the ones that are directed at me because they are conversing among themselves. Prof.
I wish today's event were like an open conference room session where I will be sitting among the panel and enjoying, perhaps in this case, your air-conditioned environment, because it is almost 11:45.
Fortunately, we do have a bit of an extension.
So, well, be that as it may, I think Honorable Okujeto, if the first topic were exclusively allotted to him, and then inferences or comments therefrom to Honorable Bachidam and my colleague, Comrade Wilson, I would just say I concur. And truly, even if we have extension of time, first of all, his expose, brilliant work, and we've commended him, and we urge him on to continue because the future is ahead of him with God's grace. But it should now be taken up by the main opposition party. It should be an NDC agenda, and for that matter, supported by the rest of the opposition fraternity. Because it sounds as if it was a diligence and his commitment to details of his work that brought out these things. But it should be, in fact, what he had, time he took, very good though, should have been preceded by a press conference with all these documents for people to know what's happening. And I think Comrade Bajidam also made very, very good points about issues that border on morality, honesty. You see, and the truthfulness that he indicated when the former President Rawlings met the religious leaders about the divinity of that noble, what do you call, virtue. You know, when I come to this studio, I used to make I have some physiology and I say order and disorder. When you read the Bible and grant permission to others of different religious faith and beliefs, you see the orderliness of nature. And they say in the beginning, God created heaven and earth and went on subsequently. And at the end of it all, he realized that, look, let me get somebody in my image, and created our first father, and then from which we had our first mother. And then he blessed them and itemized all that he had created and said, I entrust them to you. Say, take good care and let everything that I've given to you prosper. Those with life organ prosper, those without, then a different matter. And I come here and then also raise this rhetorical, perhaps comical issue that on that day when he entrusted everything that he had created, that authority, dominion, was there a Japanese? Or our first father, was he a Japanese? Was he an American? Was he a German? Was he a French? Etc. The countries whose democracies we aspire to, those where we look up for the aspect of development. I think they say the beginning itself, the whole universe was void. So any state of infrastructural development, socio-cultural advancement, consciousness had come from the very people and perhaps taking cue from the command and the blessing and authority he gave to our first father that had translated into millions of years, if we only know the time when the universe was created. You see, simple as this discussion might sound, it's very, very divine. And we go to church. Muslims went to mosque Juma yesterday, and everything is preaching. What will transpire tomorrow is all about orderliness, truthfulness, virtues. Even if you emphasize on wrongdoing, is to contrast so that you know what is ahead of us. And so when I come here, I always ask this question that, is this the sort of governance system that the revolution brought forth? So the constitution that's like a judgment, or rather our code, our creed to guide the way we govern ourselves or our way of life. Is that document good or not? And is the practitioners, are they okay or they are not okay? Which I don't know. But you see, Shakespeare says that there's no art to read the mind's construction from the face. That's sacred. But at least when we look at our faces too, we can count on age. So Comrade and I, obviously, without any margin of error, will be older than Senna and then Comrade Wilson. You know, when you grow, and that's my personal conviction, that even I know people, we knew people who were, pardon me, crooks. But when you age and you are nearing your end, you know, who one day die. And by the rule of thumb, it's elderly people who leave the stage. We should leave the stage for you as our fathers, and it might not always be you driving and you see what a shock, 31 years, 39 years, 25. When I read those things and I saw vehicles ahead of me, some chill goes, I said, why? What's happening? You see, but generally, the cycle continues. And so you feel, having been in active politics or partisan politics, and what the Comrade Batidan said is I should tell people, you know, you see, let's look at facts of this country. And Comrade, you've transcended this country, all of us. I mean, if you look at the state, and I'm saying I'm from also here in Accra, but look at Accra, then take a reflection all over the country. And so anybody who is in government, and for that matter a president, is not a joke. But we have reduced politics, and it's been reversed from the 50s and all over to paternalistic approach. So we want to give you a Zongo ministry, and then the Minister for Zongo Affairs, who just took over some few months ago, goes to Medina and goes to commission an AstroTurf. And those affairs with Zongo origin, for goodness sake. And Nima, they rank among the chief Zongos. Do you know what happens there? I go to Medina Market now. Let there be a little rain. Traders are, you see, they are in mad. Medina, yeah. Go to Abubulushin. So you have all these 260-something districts, and each of these Zongos are within districts. There's a common fund which you have put a cap on, so the common fund itself is not achieving its maximum resource base to distribute to the assemblies. Then you create a Zongo ministry, so you have an establishment with a minister with good remuneration. And what has happened in 2 years? You had a 4-year mandate. You understand? And politics had come to a point that so undo who is there with all manner of statements to convince the electorate to vote for you, and you come and you want to justify it. Listen to the president when the question was asked. And I don't watch him, I don't watch the video to look at his demeanor. But the vehemence underlying the voice tone, we have been able to pay $1.2 billion. That was so already there is the act of your predecessor doing something wrong. So as been in President Kufuor's time, you say we've stolen 10 cities, but NDC stole 12 cities. So it means you have done something better. And it has run through, and you can see that. I think the same press conference or another forum earlier on, when the statement was made, that same press conference about guinea fowls in that sarcastic comment. I mean, for goodness sake, 2 years into a 4-year mandate. You understand? Look, the kids came home, the free kids came home on Thursday and yesterday. And when I heard former President Mahama when he filed his papers, he made a statement, said he will maintain the free SHS. I said, this caption, but when I listened to the soundbite, look, anybody vying for the position must be bold to say that when I win, I will revise or review this system. It is not helping anybody. You help anybody or help those who really need help, but not in this ramshackle state. The children have come home, interview them. Some of them, the 8 subjects that they are reading, they hardly had 2 weeks. Those who went gold in November, 6-7 weeks in school, they could not get teachers to teach many of the subjects, core and elective. You understand? And ask whether the 800 or 600 that the GES has stipulated for feeding, whether that itself had translated into something good. The Association of Private Senior High Schools told you from the beginning that they have 290 senior high schools, which can take over 200,000 students. So let's forget about partisans. So Yi block was on good, so you forgot about it. That itself cannot be tenable. But because of this, the Form 2s who have come home are going in March. So if you are a parent, what happens to your child? So you had free 600 and something feeding free, and then your child comes home for 3 months, and you are going to send that child to roam about, if that's an option for you as a parent, or to go to remedial to spend more money. So this system must be reviewed and reviewed properly. Deputy Minister, former Deputy Minister for Education, he will tell you, majority of the students who get to even let's say, take about 100 top schools, are from the preparatory schools. So I have an issue if you mean well with limited resources. and I say my child went to Bishop Bowers, then my child goes to Addis Ababa, then you, a president, you take it upon yourself to say, I'll feed your child free, whether you can pay or not. And because of that, squeezing water out of stone, affecting everybody. And look, this kind of drink you're giving us, Votic, sorry to mention name, you put a stamp on it. This is how much you need money. Very good that way to maximize revenue collection. But we pensioners and others who don't work, you are squeezing, putting a cap on common fund, get fund that is supposed to provide infrastructure and other support services for educational institutions. You have put constraints because of a decision that you want free SHS. Is it sustainable? The children have come home, some even two who have come home are still in their old white shirt and khaki trousers because you have not provided money for the schools to even get them their uniform. And what have you replaced? Ask a parent who has a child in Form 3 or who are just finished and enter university against those who are in Form 2 and Form 1. And I can tell you on authority that it was even cheaper when they were paying fees because the schools took the initiative. Uniform, you went there, you paid the fees, you went to the store, you collected everything because they've gotten bales of materials, mass production, and it's far cheaper. You've taken on this responsibility, and it's as if it's a paternalistic approach, and president provide for you. Whether you like it or not, it is good. That is paternalism. That's what is happening with our politics. So, Zongo minister, look, I said, and I know Nima very well. You get to Nima from the Kanda area, the young guys themselves, those who were fortunate to travel and mobilize some little resources, virtually have rehabilitated the whole environment, cementing spaces and walkways all over by themselves. What they need there is opportunity provided by the assembly or from government. The minister, a guy calls into the program every morning and he says, look, the drainage system from Kaokudi all through, that was initiated by, if I was constructed by the Mohammed's government. It's still in the state in which it was, and Vice President Baumia just leaves the stone throw across the street in Kanda. The president himself says he lives at Nima. Do we need a Zongo ministry? What has the Zongo ministry accomplished? In what do you call it, Latebi Okoshin here. Your streets have been paved. Go through many. It's worse as you go up country. And so, you see, what is setting in is impunity. And Comrade Wilson, it's clear that you want to put a cap, but to be fair to aging, it is not everybody who has aged who has lost his conscience. You understand? And I am beginning to believe that the division that led into the president winning his party's flag bearership slot had persisted. And I can bet you that there are brains within the NPP who have been distanced from the administration. Willy-nilly, you cannot even go to 2 years down the stream. You cannot. President Kufuor didn't suffer that. He used everybody, including even the current president. But this is something that has set in. And of course, I pray, I'm just reading a piece here. The ranking, or is it the chairman of your, he said that there was no agreement between the ministry and the buyer. All these points have been made, and all of a sudden, they put in the heat on your honorable, that he was just trying to create, in fact, there's something, he claimed that Mr. Blackwell, by that conduct, had become a nuisance, in quotes, to parliament, and that his committee will know how to manage him. You see the condescending contempt. You see, and that is a question mark I raise about the practitioners. Whether majority, the majority that they have, you see, had now overcome them, their complacency, arrogance, and impunity had set in. This is something that we have to take note of. So here is a country where we say 15 million drone is okay. I fortunately to have a student who I'm teaching now from Rwanda. It's a mountainous area. If it's been implemented, you don't know the circumstances. Medical experts associations are telling you, and I feel one guy even said that the Minister for Health, or rather the Chief Director, or rather the Director General of the Ghana, whether what he is proposing, he himself will allow blood transfusion to happen under their community. And in this country, 7 districts, and every district is supposed to have a district capital with roads leading, and if there's a district hospital, do you need roads? But here is a country where president justifies the 50 million. He says it's fantastic. It's not only to carry blood, but you just returned from Japan, where you went to beg for to rehabilitate roads, and the Japanese are going to do that because they constructed the Yamuranza to Kumasi Road, and they will do that. Then you can afford to take a quarter of that money to go and engage in drone service. You can also afford to take 1/5 of that money to go and buy an embassy or a chancellery. The celebrities of Hollywood and the sports and the musicians who even have money, look at the property they buy in Hollywood. In California, expensive places with maybe 10 acres. It's not up to 4 million. That is US for you. Celebrities, Michael Jackson, etc. Maybe 4-acre ranch, and it's not up to $4 million. And here you are begging for money. I always say 1 kilometer road, you go and kneel down and beg. If there is a grant to this country at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, you see flags flying. That is the extent to which we appreciate any little money that we have. And you can afford to spend money this way, for goodness sake. Morality, without morality, there's no society. You see, and where good character and good morals will take you, your knowledge, wealth, and might will not take you. And I think politicians must begin to let us know that there's truthfulness and decency in politics. And for me, 2020, that will be, we will judge people by the content of their character and not what they profess to say. You can lie yourself into government, make somebody to look bad. I sit back and I say, so President Mahama too, all these things that they are saying about you, is it true? I'm still confronted with it because there's nothing for me to say that the President Mahama was corrupt. And they painted that picture and that made people to believe. And that's what we are reaping today. But you know, order will always establish order. And that is what I believe we shall be heading to in 2020. Thank you. I think I've finished my entire submission. I will listen to the colleagues. The air conditioning must be turned on.
So you can enjoy it.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Prof. Let me just read a couple of your messages. This one is from Stephen Covenanter. Says, Senna, happy birthday to you on this special day. May you enjoy your just at sufficient grace. Thank you very much.
Oh, you hid it from us. So you didn't give it, and then somebody from outside rather. Okay, we
just
also
telling
had
us
our
you're
words.
91 today. I mean,
So today is what, 22nd, eh?
Yeah,
Oh, your mother did it too early. You should have waited 3 days for you to get a
I don't
Christmas.
think it's the
a
mom.
Christmas.
He was eager
kicking,
to come.
kicking
Too eager to come.
Well, he continues by saying, on the issues for discussion, how come that these people who claim to so much to have competence and love to read are the ones who are always making mistakes? And how come that these mistakes are always only seen by the supposed incompetent NDC members of parliament who don't love to read, according to Baumia? The Jaco millions were discovered by the minority. The 880,000 CDs for websites were discovered by the minority. The $12 million was discovered by the NDC minority. Interestingly, all this metamorphosized into mistakes. So if we had passed all these transactions for the use of these huge sums of money, would they have brought back balances? It's so unfortunate that those who were loud yesterday over allegations are so dead silent on factual cases of corruption that this Akufo-Addo government. Have a wonderful morning, you too. And Akugri Rashid from Boku says, good morning, sir. Happy birthday to you. Honorable Samuel Kujeto Ablakwa is always on the nail with national issues, and I adore his stance. Tell him to stand firm and ignore his critics. And let me go to our WhatsApp page. It says, good morning, Senna. Tell Honorable Sami that he is doing well. God bless him and protect him for us. Please tell him that in 2016 election, I was praising him and GM. My boss, I was working with SAC. I was working. Well, it's not so clear, but he's talking about being sacked because he was an MPP man. The money in my shop were taken away from me till now. I don't have a work. He's asking for help. This one, Amasama Stadium, Ibrahim from Amasama Stadium Road says, "Good morning, Mr. Host. I want you to tell NDC delegates from branch, constituency, and regional that 2020 elections is going to be World Cup final for we NDC members. They should not leave any stone unturned." And it says, when countries like Norway are closing down embassies and reducing their visa operations to regional level, this government is opening new ones. What a way to protect the public purse. And this one says, "Senna, good morning to you and your cherished listeners around the world. The clear daylight robbery mounted on the good people of Ghana by His Excellency President Akufo-Addo and his 110 rebels is unprecedented. Plain thievery, stealing, grabbing, create loot and sharing. No president in the Fourth Republic dispensation has come to amass wealth through dubious and criminal ways like this Akufo-Addo and Bawumia government. Let's wake up, all progressives and positive and all well-meaning Ghanaians, to boot out this super incompetent President Akufo-Addo come 2020. That's from Habib and Sawam. Obed Ashaiman Jericho says, "Good morning, Senna. I congratulate my honorable Samuel from the land that the people hated for exposing the looting Christmas gift to foreign minister and party members. For the president and the speaker of parliament, only God that can help Ghanaians to come out from the bondage we are in." This one says, "Ghanaians and the speaker must applaud the Honorable Ablakwa and NDC minority in Parliament for this expose. Instead of being vilified by the Speaker, elsewhere in the USA, the Speaker would have resigned for making those comments against the ranking member. As of now, the Speaker, Paul Ryan of USA, has resigned to retirement from the House because he said he could no longer defend President Trump against America because the evidence of allegations against him are all becoming scandalous and disgrace to the Republican Party and government. And not him alone, 2 ministers, including security advisor, have resigned from the Trump government. And so let's think of Ghana and not the president. The majority should know that they're in parliament for their constituents and not Nanado. If it's in the USA, the FBI would have taken the case for investigation without any interference, with all evidence exposed by the ranking member, ALHAJI-12 in New York, says that." And this one says, "Hi Radio Gold. Ghana is seriously bleeding and will collapse very soon if responsible people in the country sit down and consent and allow Nana Akufo-Addo, the president, to continue governing the way he is doing. Responsible professionals in the country must advise the president to know the bad effects of the way he is going. Prevention is always better than cure. We want to live united and in peace." That's from Kweku in Accra. And Baba from Belgrove, Antia Kwano. "Good morning, Senator. This man, the president himself has said he was misled, and you're asking us to whether he has been misled or not. He has not only misled us, he has in fact lied to us." And let me come to Mr. Batida for your comments on the second topic, the media encounter.
Okay, thank you very much. I thought you would go back to Samuel, who usually sets a good tone, but since you have ambushed me, I will make it brief. I think we touched a bit on this issue when we were discussing the first issue about the Oslo Gate. But again, I would like to look at the president's encounter with the media as one of the errors, the many errors perhaps of his handlers, and a clear sign of how organized or disorganized the government itself is. Because from what we know about presidential encounters, the only reason why a government would like to organize a presidential encounter is for the head of state and the leader of the country to respond directly to issues and to put himself accountable directly to the people. Otherwise, we get ministers addressing the press on a regular basis about their various sectors and all that. And so normally, to call a presidential presser, a reason you want, or sometimes there is an issue, an emerging issue that requires the president, or it may also be the case that it is a regularly scheduled thing. For instance, if the president says, I want to have two press conferences or meet the press in a year, then these are also scheduled. In that case, all that involves, the point I'm trying to make is that it would have been planned, foreseen, and if it is not planned or foreseen, it must be something that is arranged in order to respond to a situation that was not anticipated. Now, in all these, you look at both the content of the president's own remarks. I don't want to talk about his lateness and all that. I think other people, I mean, social media and the journalists who were there have already expressed and put on record their protest about the fact that the president came in 30 minutes late and then wanted to leave earlier. But you look first at the content, because that is also what sets the tone for either why the president wants to meet the press, or how his disposition to accountability. And you see, when I say his disposition to accountability, it's a very serious statement I am making. Sometimes people like making gimmicks, pretending as if, oh, I'm an open person. If you have questions, you can ask me. No, you have to look at the content. So already you look at the content of his own statement prior to the questions and answers, and then you get a sign of the tone. And it was in the content that he read before that he responded to one of the aspirants of the NDC, which is the former president, by referring to drones. The fact that he prefers to fly drones than guinea fowls to Burkina Faso, completely below the belt, completely unpresidential. Elsewhere, I mean, people would react differently, but Ghanaians are very nice people. We are all still, this was not during the questions and answers time so that you say, okay, maybe he wanted to change the tempo of the thing. No, this was in his statement. The statement that the president had to read, he was talking 2 years into office about not even a factual matter, because this thing about guinea fowls flying to Burkina, it's not. So again, when you talk about tone, it means that if he put that in his address, the whole thing was a joke. It was not a serious business. If he put such a joke in his address to the media before he takes questions, he certainly sent out a certain kind of signal. Apart from that, of course, he already showed that he's in a combative mood. He's in a belligerent mood. He is coming to fight a perceived enemy. So, you see, I said it earlier that this president will go down as perhaps one of the most divisive in our history. Because, you see, even politics, and I'm not the best of politicians, even politics requires that you try to give some level of pretense that you are no longer, as president of a country, you are a leader and a father of the entire country. But we don't see this in this president. Every single thing of his is about his opponents, he and his opponents. When citizens are complaining about something and their representatives who are in parliament echo the concerns of the citizens, the president narrows it down to his opponents. And I think that again tells us about the kind of leader we unfortunately voted for. But again, what can you do about it? This is the president we have. And again, you go into the interaction itself and swing an exchange with someone who had asked a question, trying to understand the question. So embarrassing. I was so ashamed. And you see, there is something, it appears, either our president himself that is not aware of, or the government as a body, as an institution, is not aware of that. These days, when you hold live activities, they are transmitted globally. So people all over the world are watching our president. And then he's saying, this thing you are talking about, and this thing is not a joking thing. This is something that happened about medical stores. Whilst he was campaigning in 2015, 2016. And there was a whole investigation. And I am sure that during the campaigns, there were even all kinds of issues raised about that issue. But now he becomes head of state, president of our country, and then a journalist comes to make a presentation. And so, for me, that is the president we have. And if people don't want to be honest with themselves, that is what you get. This is the price we are paying for our lack of honesty, especially in our politics. Because, you see, and then he goes on to ask his ministers. Unfortunately, on this particular issue of the medical stores, he asked the minister who comes to make a presentation which is in tandem with his character of not being factual or truthful, depending on where you look at it from. Because it's the same minister who lied about the state of the medical facility at the University of Ghana. And then the president, who did not know what was going on about this issue, had to ask that minister. And from what we know now, even the minister's presentation were not accurate, because there have been meetings subsequent to the initial thing about that program, where Bill Gates people were supposed to come. There was a meeting in August 2017, and you can see the pictures with the minister himself and the president. And the minister could not even give the president any guidance. So you see, we are in deep trouble, because it's not only the head that has a problem, but the other parts of the system. And that is a recipe for disaster. Let me make a point just about also his views when he was asked about what he makes of critiques, not criticism. Sometimes people mix these things up. What does he make of critiques of some of his policies? And even, as I said, even in politics, for political reasons, you can say, well, we think that what we were trying to do is that we can do for our country, but if others have better opinions or ideas, we are ready to look at them. It's about what they are presenting. No, that is not what our president was coming to tell us. These people are going to continue fabricating things. That was his response. And this time round, and I was happy to hear that one, it was not only about the opposition party, it was also about civil society and the rest. They have nothing to offer. So that is why I'm saying that in the context of what has happened in the last 2 years, which is that generally, I wouldn't say completely that it has been the case, but generally, it seems our civil society groups and sections of the media have given this president too much of a honeymoon. And that is why when I was making my earlier submission, I said, maybe all those who thought that let us give the president a chance should know by now, 24 months into his office, that if he wanted to take any chance, he would have taken it. Because when you are asked about policies and programs that your government is implementing, some of which have challenges that everybody knows about, including those that are supposed to benefit from the policies. The school children, their parents, even the educational stakeholders, teachers, are all pointing to the problem. They ask you, what are you going to do about it? They are empty noises. You see, modern governance is different. And you see, I use the Honorable Kwesi Bochwe went to hand over to him. I mean, when they had to resign. I don't know whether they were told to resign or they themselves decided. They went to en masse. They went to hand over to him. One would have thought that, oh, thank you for the good work for the country. We would I would have wished that some of you stayed on so that you can help us with continuity. He said, oh, it's a good decision you have all decided to go because new king, new law. That is what he said. So the mindset of the president is something about rulership, not about governance. The mindset of the president we have is that he's a new king and so he can bring new law. Mr. President, that is an outmoded concept. New king, new law has no place in modern governance. In the governance we run, even if you are a new king, you have to look at what you take from the king that was there before you. And Mensa Otabil, he says, honor your predecessor. I listened to Mensa Otabil last week. He said, anyone who comes, I don't know whether he was speaking to this president or what. He said, anyone who comes and says that what I came to meet is a mess, there's something wrong. Mensa Otabil said that. That is why I always say, I'm a content man. I don't believe in just speculation. So I was saying, maybe the pastor wants to tell his friend something and he didn't know how to put it. So he used his pulpit and said, honor your predecessor. Stop saying that when I came there was no mess there, because if there was no seat, you wouldn't have come to sit on it. Okay. Mr. President, the age matter you people talked about is an important matter. We expect a lot more from an elderly person, whether you are president or you are just a parent. We expect a lot more than what we are getting.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Batidam. And before I come to Mr. Wilson, he actually issued a statement on behalf of the PNC on this issue. And the opening is that the People's National Convention expresses its disappointment in the outcome of the just ended presidential encounter with the media. And for that matter, the public, is dated on the 19th. That's of all sectors and ministries. So,
I thought you give the final. That was what we were requesting from them.
Okay, so the PNC wishes to communicate to the president to have an adequate preparation prior to the next engagement that he wishes to have with the public through such an important platform. Important. Okay. And the PNC is also entreating the president to apologize to the public for such an abysmal engagement.
Yeah.
That's signed by you.
That's the most important part.
You call it abysmal.
That's the most important part that we wanted to have. Now, the statements you read sums up everything, and so I'm not going to elaborate further. But it's important for us to appreciate the fact that in all jurisdictions, encounter with the press or the media is very key and very important. It is one area where individuals feel or are made to feel that they are in touch with practical governance and leadership. Over the past years, moving away from autocracy to democracy, one significant character or trait of autocracy is that leadership is sitting somewhere and then the followers are also somewhere. And so all leadership does is to direct, send command, and there's no medium back is given. What the leader wants is what he or she does, and that is autocracy. Now, when we decided to move to come, and the feedback was, okay, Mr. President, you are doing this for the purposes of us. This and this and this are our challenges because we are the receivers. And so we are giving you a feedback. There hasn't been any law that straightly binds any leader in this Fourth Republic to have a public encounter. And so individuals have come and they've decided to christen it the way they want to have it. Some leaders came and they said it is town hall meetings or town hall encounter. Others come and say meet the public. Others come and say meet the press or the media. And so they decide to do it as and when they pleases and as and when they feel that there's a need to do it. And so there's nothing that binds any leader or any president to do that. We are just doing it because we want to entrench democracy. The point I'm making here is that because there's no law that binds, in other words, no one is forcing anyone to do it. It is either I am doing it and I'm doing it right, or I'm not doing it at all. You don't come and in the pretense of creating an impression that you want to deepen democracy, you do things abysmally. And indeed, those of us who followed the encounter, he made this categorically. If there was a true encounter, feedback that would have been given to the president on that moment is that, Mr. President, this is probably what you are perceiving, or this is what you intend. But the truth of the matter is that your policies are not putting money in our pockets. Unfortunately, because that encounter didn't take place, the president came to say what he perceives without getting a feedback as to what the realities are. The president came and then spent about an hour or so telling us what he has already prepared. Just after, the communications minister told us that they have about 70 questions. They've categorized the questions into sectors, and they have about 70 of the questions. And so they are going to, just when the minister ended making that submission, the president interjected and said that, well, we have a very limited time, so you should reduce the number, or you should have it in a particular period. Now, reality is, it ended up 12 questions were asked out of the 70. But mind you, the purpose of the encounter was to create a platform for individuals to rather communicate to the president. It wasn't the other way around. What the man did, or the president did, it was the same thing as going to parliament to go and give, State of the Nation's address. If it is the State of the Nation's address, we don't need that wasting of time. You know, the unfortunate thing is that this encounter will come with a budget. The taxpayers' money, we ask ourselves, whatever amount was allocated for that encounter, let's ask ourselves that the outcome and what happened on that day, does it merit even one peso being spent from the taxpayers' coffers? You get it? So clearly, the president did not meet the press. What he rather did was to give us the State of the Nation's address, which was not what we were expecting. The other thing is that out of these 12 questions that were asked, or more than half of it, the president was quick to say that he's referring them to ministers, the sector ministers. And I think one or two of the questions, he even indicated that that minister, the sector minister, was not available. That questions were not answered. If we were to have an encounter with the ministers, there shouldn't have been any need for us to have all of us our attention to be taken to Flagstaff House thinking that we're going to have an encounter with the president. There was nothing like that. It was more of meet the ministers other than meeting the president. But quickly, one or two issues took my mind. The first one had to do with a question that talked about drones. Strangely, when we're talking of drones and we're expecting the president to have given some convincing answers, what he was quick to state was that he would prefer to invest in drones than to invest in guinea fowl. That's an insult. That was just an insult to all of us. I don't know what he meant by that. But what has guinea fowl got to do with drones? And what has guinea fowl got to do with the health sector? The president, it was more, forgive my words, but it was more of words coming from grassroots foot soldier communicators of the NPP. I was not expecting the president to make such a question, to give such an answer. He also made reference to the free SHS in his State of the Nation's address. You know, that was, I'm talking of the press encounter that took place, which for me is like a State of the Nation's address. He was talking of free SHS and the fact that individuals have had the opportunity to go to school and all that. Look, I keep telling the president and the NPP government that, look, it is not the quantity that really matters. It is the quality. So now, let our boss, Patrick, do a search on current surveys and current assessment of Ghana's education. And all reports that are coming tells you that our quality education is falling. It's speedily falling. We are just talking about quantity and not making reference to quality. What is the essence of pushing everyone through for the sake of we want to push everyone through? After the person has gone through, when you become so irrelevant, mind you, there's nothing more dangerous than half-baked education. It is important that we know that, look, being ignorant, sometimes it is even more better to be ignorant than to be half-informed or half-educated. But finally, on this issue, on this encounter, because as I said, everything has been put in there. One guy from one of the media house, the question, which had to do with the health sector, aside the drone, and as usual, he referred it to the minister. Now the minister comes in and says that, and the one who asked the question was reading from a document and said that this is a previous administration. Now when he came in, he assessed it and he was asking for further information. Unfortunately, the partners, the outside partners to this agreement failed to present those documents. Now, because they failed to present those documents, he decided to cancel the agreement. And I said to myself, an agreement that is supposed to bind Ghana and another country or another party outside this country, such an important agreement, a minister can abrogate it and will not give briefing to the president. It is very dangerous. A minister can decide that, look, this is an agreement that has been ongoing. I've come to it, I want to assess it, and then I realize that some individuals are not giving information that needs to be given, and so I've decided to take it off. And in all the briefings, the minister, since 2017 when the minister became, all instances where he has had a chance to brief the president, are we saying that the minister decided not to brief the president on such an important agreement which he decided to cancel? All right? Now, the cancellation, we don't even know because he himself admitted that it was an agreement that was ongoing. Is it a cancellation that is leading to a judgment that no one is asking those questions? Is it also possible that the minister had actually been briefing the president, but just that the president forgot about it? That is also a question we need to ask. But finally, I think that most of the questions, even though the president just communicated that he didn't have time for the public, he wasn't in to have any question answer time, all he wanted to do was to present an already prepared speech just to read it and go. There were some questions that came, which was, for me, was very good. And I think that it's a plus to the media reps that were there compared to last year's own. Okay, last year was really a mess. And so when one or two questions started coming in, I realized that at least this one seems to be more refined. And for that matter, I want to say a big congratulations to the rep that came from Unique FM, Cecil Wuntumi or whatever. I think yeah, Cecil Wuntumi. He asked a very brilliant question with regards to the president always talking of having the China model in Ghana. He's always passionate about the Chinese model. Cecil made reference to population. That look, the Chinese model, aside all other things, they have the advantage of the population. So what do we do with ours too? we hear the question, how the president answered the question. Total deviation from what the question was. Absolutely, his answer had nothing to do with that. And so I would just want to reiterate what the content of the PNC's press statement states, and to mention that, look, it will just be prudent for the president and the handlers of the presidency to come out and give a strong apology to all Ghanaians, simply because the last encounter, as far as we are concerned, it was just an insult to the populace and to Ghanaians.
Briefly.
That was his assessment of something that he concluded was meant to deceive Ghanaians. As I was saying earlier, this is something that was running live. He is making a serious statement about an external group imputing motives. He's saying that they were coming to deceive Ghanaians. Those were his words. So again, as I was saying, these people are listening. Yeah. They read and they get to know the content. He said, well, we have been having contact with your country. We have been having discussions with your various officials of your government. We came to present something. If you don't accept it, you don't accept it. But for you to say that to read meaning into it, and the word he used was deceive. I said, I'm not going to allow them to deceive Ghanaians. I thought that was very bad for our international relations and diplomacy. And again, part of one thing I didn't mention, which I should, is that it's a national security issue if the president doesn't know much of what is going on in the country, security issue. And if people who are listening and watching him get to know that, oh, they can actually cut deals and conclude things without his knowledge, we are in trouble.
Thank you, Sebastian. Let's end with Honorable Peter.
Thank you very much. I must say that I agree generally with all what my senior colleagues have said on this matter. The presidential media encounter, as we all know, is not new. This Fourth Republic has seen the presidential media encounter being carried out under different formats. All our presidents in this Fourth Republic have opened themselves up for media engagements. It helps deepen our democracy. It helps with the principles of transparency and accountability. But on this particular occasion, I agree with the review that to the fact that the president did not impress. Indeed, according to the Media Foundation for West Africa, they say that this is the worst media encounter in the history of our country. We have read the assessments of journalists like Manasseh Azuri Awuni, who has said that it was a disaster. Other journalists like Efia Pokua, Bernard Avle, Aku Banase, Moro Awudu, and many others. Indeed, all the civil society organizations who have assessed the president's performance publicly have said that they are not impressed. They were left totally disappointed. I believe that the disappointment comes from a number of reasons. First, the whole idea to change the format and for the first time ask that journalists should write down the areas of questioning. Very strange. Why would you ask journalists to write their area of questioning at the period of registration? You see, it suggests that you do not only want to give the president foreknowledge, you are also restricting the journalists. You see, journalists should have free hand to carry out their duties. It is even possible that whilst you are there at the event, statements that the president makes, even a question that has come, may necessitate another follow-up question. You should give journalists the freedom to carry out their duties. So that format is problematic, and I hope that it will be abandoned. And you see, what even makes the whole matter worrying is that you call this a presidential media encounter, and yet 80% of the time is spent on your presentation. You speaking to the journalists, engaging in a monologue of a sort. That is most disappointing. And you time the president's speech. The president spoke for more than 40 minutes. And then you leave journalists with only 15 questions. Over 70 journalists asking only 15 questions. Now, I must also make the point that I agree with all our colleagues around the table that we must all be deeply, deeply worried about our president's lack of appreciation of the issues, his lack of grasp, his clear lack of information on very basic and rudimentary matters. And why we should be very worried, Senna, is that if you look at the Ghanaian governance architecture, we operate an executive presidency. President Akufo-Addo is not a ceremonial president. We don't have a prime minister where you can have the ceremonial president focus on just ceremonial matters, the Independence Day events, and just sitting in states and receiving important dignitaries and just going with the pomp and pageantry and the flow and all of that, where the ceremonial president does not really have to care very much about the details of governance. The Ghanaian governance and constitutional architecture is different. If you look at Article 57, which talks about the president, Article 57 states, and I quote, "There shall be a president of the Republic of Ghana, who shall be the head of state and head of government and commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ghana." So Article 57 is very, very clear. In the Ghanaian context, the president is not only head of state, you are also head of government. That's why the framers of our constitution made the distinction and emphasized it. So the president is head of state, he is head of government, and commander-in-chief of the Ghana Armed Forces. So you are not only President Akufo-Addo is not merely a head of state. He's not a ceremonial president. I've heard people say, "Oh, the president has shown honesty. We shouldn't bother. That's why the ministers are paid." No. He's head of state. He's head of government, and he is also the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. Now, Articles 58(1), 3, and 4 even gives us more clarity on what is expected of our president. Article 58(1) says, "The executive authority of Ghana shall vest in the president and shall be exercised in accordance with the provisions of this constitution." 58(2) says, "The executive authority of Ghana shall extend to the execution and maintenance of this constitution all laws made under or continued in force by this constitution." 58(3) stipulates, "Subject to the provision of this constitution, the functions conferred on the president by clause 1 of this article may be exercised by him either directly or through officers subordinate to him. Listen to clause 4. It says, except as otherwise provided in this constitution, or by a law not inconsistent with this constitution, all executive acts of government shall be expressed to be taken in the name of the president. So, per the constitution that we operate now, apart from the Attorney General, which is the only ministerial position that the constitution provides, apart from the Attorney General, the president can decide that I want to be finance minister, I want to be education minister, I want to be health minister. He doesn't need. He can decide, really. He can decide. And remember that every executive action, every executive authority is derived from the president. So the president ought to know, especially very basic items like the Central Medical Stores fire and what has happened thereafter. The president must know. The president must be able to tell us. When you hear your president consistently say, I'm at a loss, where is the foreign minister? You have a flagship project like the Marine Drive project. Because the tourism minister is not there, it can't be answered. Then I'm very, very worried. I mean, a major scandal is brewing, this Oslo scandal. The president is asked, and he says, as for this question, the foreign minister will not allow me to answer. So where is the foreign minister? She should come and answer. And then after you have heard from the foreign minister, one side, you draw conclusions and say that this is just machinations or desperate politicians. Meanwhile, all the facts show that this whole scandal has led to the ministry pulling out of the transaction. It is not just a mere allegation without more. It was not mischief. Indeed, your people had presented documents. They were going ahead with this transaction. It had gone beyond just mere expression of interest. Your own majority leader had said in parliament that we ought to investigate this matter. But for the speaker not following on and listening to the majority leader, not agreeing with him, we will have had a committee by now looking into this matter and its fallout. And yet you have the president just having listened to one side. Any wonder that you are seeing the disarray, the free-for-all scandals, the total chaos in governance. So we have a crisis on our hands. We have a president who has no detail at all. I mean, I'm even being generous by saying that he has no detail, he's not paying attention to detail. Even just being on top of his brief, just appreciating the issues, he can't be bothered. The president looked so unprepared, he looked so disinterested. It's as though we are begging him to be president, as if he can't wait to be relieved of the position. And the consequences for governance, because when you are president of a nation, the decisions that you make determine whether we survive or not, whether this republic is kept intact or not. So a president must, especially an executive president, as Article 57 and Article 58 provides, an executive president must be on top of his brief. Nobody is saying that he should be God and he should know everything and every little technical detail. But he should, we saw President Mahama. Everybody is missing President Mahama. From education, health, environment, science. Everybody is talking about it. Read the civil society organization assessments. At least he has fair knowledge. And you can tell that this is a president who also listens to other sides of a situation. Because if not, your ministers, your appointees will run rings around you. Because when they know that our president is not in charge, he doesn't care about the detail, will not even check, he's not using his listening to other voices, they will just do whatever they want. Look at how the health minister, for example, appears to have been exposed by what he said. Look at what the Zongo minister, what he said. Now videos have emerged that he totally misled the president. So how can you then assess your ministers? And already you have 111, the highest in our history. We are paying them. And if there cannot be a system, we cannot be assured of a president who is on top of the brief, who is able to assess from other independent sources whether what his ministers are telling him is accurate, is true. Where are we going? What will happen to our country if we continue this way? So we must send a clear message to the president that please, as for the presidency, it's not, with all due respect, it's not just about wearing the suit and partying and attending cocktails. And please, he must make time and read his brief. National security briefings, are they going on or not? Does he listen? Does he pay attention? Is he talking to other sources? So that this country can move forward. It's about the lives of 30 million people. It's about our destiny. It's about our collective progress. What we have all seen this week is most frightening indeed. And our president should remember that he is not a ceremonial president. Articles 57 and 58 is very clear. In Ghana, we operate an executive presidency who must be hands-on, who must show in-depth knowledge of the issues that affect us so that people can have relief, our people can develop in freedom and justice. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable. One message directed at you. Good morning, Senator, and your humble panelists. Let's help to redeem Ghana. Our education sector is deteriorating. Teacher education is becoming unattractive. Newly trained teachers, teacher trainees, among others, are suffering. These were not what we have been promised. We live to see what happens. Senator Numbo, I'd like to use your platform to console all newly trained teachers who are struggling to secure a national service which intends to deny us our automatic postings from GES. They should be calm at the appropriate time. We shall exercise our powers. And says, I wish all newly trained teachers and teacher trainees, including the good people of Tong, Central Tong, North Tong, Merry Christmas and a prosperous New Year. I must commend Honorable Samuel Kujosa, popularly known as Togbe, is it Wogbeji? Wogbe Karen Saga, for his exposé on the Karen Saga. You and your panelists are really doing very well. That's from Magbuni Nicholas Kelvin. So before we go, two very important information. First of all, the vehicle fair is ongoing at Accra International Trade Fair. If you are seeking to sell or buy, be it used or brand new or registered, you can visit the Ghana Trade Fair Center on the 22nd and 23rd. That's the Gold Old School Jam is happening on the 29th of December 2018. All roads will lead to Radio Gold as your power station present the maiden edition of the Gold Old School Jam at the forecourt of Radio Gold. Come, groove and boogie down to the best jams from the 70s to the 2000s with the finest DJs, DJ Widdy, DJ Gospel, DJ Abega and DJ Nat. There's a Gold Old School Jam happening live at the forecourt of Radio Gold on the 29th of December 2018. 29th of December 2018, time 7 p.m.